Welcome to our Facebook Live, where UC Davis Health experts provide information that you want to know. I'm Pamela Wu. Thanks for joining us. With me today virtually are Bill Corbett and Bill Ferrier, both Bill, the Bills. Bill Corbett works at UC Davis Health. Bill Ferrier is a retired veterinarian and former director of the California Raptor Center at UC Davis. Today, we're discussing something a little bit different from our usual health-related topics. We're going to talk about our immensely popular Peregrine falcons. For those of you who are among the thousands watching our webcam stream, you know the reason for today's unique topic. Our hospital has a Peregrine falcon nest atop its roof. With our webcam looking at 5 amazing hatchlings this year, it's become must-see streaming during the self-isolation period. We've already received many questions from viewers, and if you have questions during the broadcast, you can post them in the comments, and our experts will try to answer them. Bill, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Ferrier, it looks like you have a winged guest with us.
I do. I have Layla. She is a juvenile tundra peregrine that I had the good fortune of pulling a permit to trap her from the state of Texas on her migration from the Arctic to South America. And so the tundra peregrines are the most migratory of all of the different subspecies, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, she's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. She's wearing a hood that keeps her calm, so she doesn't get upset regarding any noises around her or seeing something that frightens her. And I'm glad to share her with you today.
Wonderful. We look forward to seeing more of her a little bit later on. Let's go to Bill Corbett. Bill, while your day job is in our purchasing department here at UC Davis Health, you are also a licensed falconer, and you built our hospital's nest for the Peregrine family. Tell us about the family. I understand that there are 5 chicks in the nest this year.
Yeah, it's very unusual to get 5 babies. Last year we had 4, and I thought that was, amazing. And this year we had that 5th egg. We had our little bird. He hatched 5 days later than the other one, so it was very unusual that normally the eggs kind of are synchronized and they all hatch together. But we had that 5th egg, and when my wife Kathy saw him, and he was such a tiny little guy, he was named Peanut from that day on. And so he's a celebrity. Everyone asked me, like, how is Peanut doing? So I'm happy to report he's thriving and finally growing. And my daughter Megan and Kathy, every day they ask me to bring Peanut home, but I say no, he's fine. He's fine. He'll be okay in the nest.
He is so much smaller than his siblings, and I know that there has been a lot of interest in him in particular. When I say a lot of interest, I just learned that we have had 57,000, more than 57,000 page views on our Peregrine Falcon page this calendar year. So tons of interest there. Tell us about the sort of, day-to-day life of our hatchlings. What are they eating? Is there a lot of competition for food? What are they doing?
Well, in the beginning, they're pretty orderly, and the mom, usually the father will bring the food and mom feeds them, and they line up patiently. But now as they get a little older, we're getting some food squabbles and a little more tugging and pulling like a household of teenagers. But these parents are amazing. I think that's another reason we had 5 birds, is these parents produce so much food and are so healthy and robust that is why we have this number of birds. And so they're right now, if you watch the webcam, they're not in the picture as much because they're starting to wander more and they're getting out of the nest box, and probably in 2 to 3 weeks they'll be taking their first flight. So they're coming along great. We're thrilled that they're happy and healthy, and there's a really good source of food nearby to keep them well fed from the parents.
Speaking of food, what are they eating most of the time?
Well, I'll let Bill talk. I mostly witnessed lots of pigeons and doves, and Bill can maybe speak a little bit to what he knows of their diet to be.
Yeah, Dr. Ferrier, tell us about their diet and what they're eating.
Peregrines eat other birds, and so they're not catching rodents as a typical rule, or mammals. They want feather quarry. They also want to catch it in the air. And so what we've done here is we've built these artificial cliffs, which typically peregrines nest on, and incorporated with that are canyons below. And so in the peregrine's eyes, they have cliffs and they have canyons in these urban setting environments. And then we've also have an ample source of pigeons there. And so the birds are flying up high, seeing the pigeons flying down under them, and then stooping at an incredible rate of speed to grasp their prey. And my suspicion is in the urban environment there in Sacramento, they're probably primarily eating feral pigeons.
Some people have expressed concerns about these falcons potentially depleting the local songbird population to feed their young. Is that a concern? And if so, how much of a concern is it?
Very minimal concern for the peregrine falcons. They typically are hunting above the canopy and not below the canopy, while your songbirds are typically below the canopy. Now, if the songbird ventures out across that open canyon that I was talking about, then they would be fair game for the peregrine, but the likelihood of them doing that, and they know the falcons are there, and so they're not going to risk it like that. The bigger risk for our songbirds, I have bird feeders myself, would be pats and Cooper hawk. A Cooper hawk is a accipiter, a short wing hawk that oftentimes will live in urban environments where there's a high concentration of small birds, and that's their primary diet.
You mentioned them catching their prey in midair, which leads me to ask just how adept of a hunter is this bird?
Oh, I mean, that's what they've completely adapted for. And I think that that's one of the things that people appreciate about the peregrine falcon, in that they will stoop up to 200 miles an hour and strike their prey and are able to catch it before it hits the ground. And this is particularly true for the Peale's peregrines, which is the larger subspecies that lives out over the ocean in the Aleutian Islands, for example. And so they catch their game over water and have to catch it before it splashes into the water. But the word peregrine means wanderer. And so the peregrine falcon will wander at very high altitude looking for game below. And the higher they are, the greater advantage they have over the game below. And another reason why the impact that they would have on songbirds in an urban environment would be very, very low.
I would think that they have a couple of things really working in their favor in terms of hunting. First is their speed, and the second is their incredible eyesight. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I mean, I've read that they can see the print of a newspaper a mile away. Now, I don't know exactly if that's true or not, but they can perceive movement of particularly of prey items from an incredibly long ways away. And so, yeah, eyesight for diurnal raptors, all diurnal raptors rely on their keen sense of eyesight to help them find their prey.
And how fast can they be?
How fast?
Mm-hmm.
So when the peregrine falcon is stooping down, they can go over 200 miles an hour. In fact, a gentleman who is a falconer and also a parachute jumper in Washington did a study with peregrine falcons where they were releasing them from an airplane, trained falcons that would stoop with the parachute guys, and they timed how fast the bird was going, and they can actually go faster. A free-falling body will fall at 9.8 meters per second squared, and the peregrine falcon in a stoop can beat that free-falling body through their airfoil and also by beating their wings on the way down. So they're an incredibly athletic bird, and I think that's one of the things that so many of us appreciate about the peregrine falcon.
Really amazing. Bill Corbett, are our falcons, I call them our falcons, right? They're like atop our hospital. Are they, how many times a day are the babies eating? Do they eat every day? Do they eat multiple times a day?
Yeah, they eat at least 3 to 4 times a day. The parents are bringing them food. And if you're like me and you watch the camera a lot, you can watch them come in. I think at this time in their life, they're really growing much. They're like doubling their weight like every 2 or 3 days. And so they'll probably in another week or two start to taper off a little on their food. But I liken it to maybe having, 5 teenagers in your home and you're having to go to Costco 5 times a day in order to feed them. That's basically what our parents are doing. They're just making these food runs like crazy. And the mom's hunting a lot more. In the beginning, the dad usually does 90% of hunting when they're young, but now mom's out there bringing in the groceries too.
Bill Corbett, what prompted your longtime interest in falcons?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think Bill will be the same story when we were young, say 5 or 6 years old. I was always intrigued by raptors, and we would go on family vacations, and I would tell my dad, hey, there's a condor. It was probably a turkey vulture, but it was just that love of birds. And fortunately, I went to UC Davis, where Bill's affiliated to, and I met up with some falconry friends who introduced me to the sport. And that was back around 1980. And I've been flying birds and going out with other falconers ever since, and trying to help the raptors any way I can because of our, they're just a magnificent creature. And the more you watch them, the more you'll admire them.
Dr. Bill Ferrier, I'm interested in your thoughts about what it is about the appeal of the peregrine falcon that resonates with so many.
The appeal of them, just what I talked about earlier in terms of their stooping ability, their beauty, and there's a little bit of a mystery behind them also, because when we go back to 1970, DDT just about decimated the peregrine falcon, and particularly in California, we were down to 2 active known nest sites in California in 1970. And so part of, I think, the mystique about the peregrine falcon is, if you're a falconer, you couldn't have one because there weren't any around.
Yeah.
And through captive breeding, it was really the falconry community that got together and falconers managed every major peregrine falcon breeding operation in the country. And the famous falconer, Dr. Tom Cade, who was the director of the ornithology lab at Cornell, pioneered a lot of the techniques that are used to breed these birds in captivity. In California, we were very fortunate to have UC Santa Cruz Predatory Bird Research Group get involved with this very early. My colleague, Dr. Jim Roush, veterinarian, orthopedic surgeon in the Bay Area, he actually started that group decades ago. And their whole goal at the time was to improve peregrine falcon populations in California. They bred and released over 1,000 birds.
Wow.
Today we estimate that we have about 400 active peregrine nests in California, probably more than we've ever had in history. And that's why they're venturing out into urban environments to find their nest sites.
Bill Corbett, you've been watching the peregrines atop the hospital for about 5 years now. Is this the same pair of birds, the same pair that come back every year?
I think what happened, I would say I'm very confident that the female, the one that's laying the eggs, and the mom is the same bird. She has a couple of feather patterns on her that I've noticed. But 3 years ago, there was a different male, and something happened to him. And last year, this other male showed up. He has bands on him, so he's easy to recognize. Mm-hmm. So something must have happened. They do normally mate, for life, but if something does happen to one of the pairs, another one will, probably come in. And so I would say definitely the males, they've been together 2 years for sure. The same pair.
And since you've been watching them, and as you said, the same mom throughout these years.
Yeah.
Have you learned anything sort of new or surprising about peregrines since you've been watching this particular family for so long?
Well, and having watched other nests, I just think this is an exceptional mom. She is just so calm. She knows how to feed them. These, I think what makes our nest unique is just that there's so much food around that they can feed them and just keep, it's like a production line, a kitchen assembly. They just keep coming and coming and coming with food. And it just astounds me how much food they can catch and keep these youngsters fed and happy and, fledging and flying off. Last year, I think you learned that we had a couple that left the nest a little early, mm-hmm. and we had to do a little intervention and put them back up in the nest. And that is the danger of the urban setting, that in the wild, if the birds land on the ground, it's not a big deal. Mom can kind of feed them and look over them. But here, if they land on the ground, we have to worry about cars, animals, people. And so the downside of the urban falcon is that there are some, they can hit buildings, and if they get in trouble, the parents can't really look out for them. So we're going to be on high alert here in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll tell everyone to be on the lookout for any loose birds.
Yeah, any like teen falcons like toddling around the parking lot.
Yeah, that's basically what happened last year. They just got tired out and kind of stressed out, and fortunately we have an elevator. We just took them right back up to the 14th floor, and then I think all 4 of them got off successfully. So we're hoping for the same result this year.
Yeah, really, really amazing.
Yeah.
People are often really surprised to learn that there's an active family of peregrines on the roof of our hospital. They might be even more amazed to learn that it's right by the helicopter pad. I guess they don't mind the helicopter. Do they seem to react to it?
They don't. It's kind of like the helicopters always come in from one direction. So they're really not in that flight pattern because of the neighbors don't like to hear our noisy helicopters. So the way the helicopters come in, the peregrines they're pretty adaptable to the human activity. And so I don't think it phases them at all.
We are discussing peregrine falcons because there's a falcon family with a nest on top of the UC Davis Medical Center. It's amazing. Our guests are UC Davis Health staff member Bill Corbett, who happens to be a licensed falconer. And also joining us today is also Bill Ferrier, a retired veterinarian and former director of the California Raptor Center at UC Davis. We welcome your questions in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them during this broadcast. And Dr. Ferrier, at this time, I think I might invite you to bring your guest back into the shot.
Okay, I'll grab her.
Very exciting. When I was told that we would be, having our discussion on Facebook Live about falcons, I didn't realize there'd actually be a falcon joining us for the conversation. And there she is.
So this is Layla, and as I mentioned earlier, she is a tundra peregrine. In North America, there's 3 subspecies of peregrine. We have the largest of them, Peel's peregrine, which lives on the Queen Charlotte Islands and also the Aleutian Islands. And the medium-sized peregrine called the Anatum peregrine, and that's what the birds are on the UC Davis Med Center. They're the peregrines that live primarily in the lower 48 from the coast inland. And then the smallest of the subspecies and the most migratory would be the tundra peregrine. These birds will nest up in the Arctic from Greenland all the way across Siberia. And then in the fall, they migrate to South America. And as they migrate, they concentrate in a couple of different areas in the United States, one being South Padre Island in Texas. And that's a common place for bird watchers to go to see them. And I was fortunate enough to obtain a permit on a lottery from the state of Texas to trap this girl, who probably had traveled about 6,000 miles when I got her.
Wow. For those who are just joining us and didn't hear you explain the hood that she's wearing at the beginning, could you tell us about that?
I'm sorry, Pamela, you zoned out on the audio.
Yeah, that's okay. For those who are just joining us and didn't hear your explanation about the hood that she's wearing, could you tell us about that?
Sure. So this is a falconry tool that we use, and people also in raptor rehabilitation use hoods. And it's a cap that goes on the head, kind of like blinders on a horse. And it keeps the bird very calm so she can't see. This hood was specifically made for her. It fits her perfectly. And you can see we call that a rouse. She's very comfortable wearing it. And for example, if we're traveling and going out to a hunting field, then she would be hooded in the back of my truck and we'll ride there with no problem. And, another vehicle can drive by. It won't upset her at all. She's a happy customer with the hood on.
She looks very calm right now. I'm going to fire away with some of the questions that we've received from viewers online. The first is, once the baby birds, once our fledglings are grown, will they stay in this area or will they go further out?
I can answer that in that most likely they're going to be branching out. Peregrines are kind of territorial, and the parents will support the kids for a while. It's kind of like, when the kids come back from college, you can hang around for a while, but eventually there's this little nudge and these birds will want to go find their own territory. they typically will not start breeding until they're 2 or 3 years old. So probably come the end of the summer, these 5 babies will all be kind of moving on and finding their own area to hang out.
The next question asks, where do the parents go when it isn't nesting season? Do we know if they stay together?
These two are kind of unusual. They hang around here all year long. I think they just like the conditions. Bill, I think Bill can talk about other nest sites where they're probably not there the whole year.
You know, raptors in general are not very gregarious, and one exception to that would be Harris hawks that live together in family units in the Sonoran Desert. But these birds are rather aloof, and as a general rule, they sort of split up. They don't live together, for example, a mated pair all year round. They may hunt in the same area, but I would seriously doubt that you would catch them roosting together once the nesting season is over. We see quite a few peregrines, and a female in particular, over in the woodland area by Costco, catching pigeons there. And so they'll move all around in the local area, and the primary thing that'll keep them somewhere is a food source.
Our next question asks, at night, do the parents sleep on the ledge by the nest? If so, how do they not fall?
Our birds both nest, or not rest, they roost right above their nest, kind of overlooking. So they're always there. If you drive by on X Street, you can see them up there on the top of the building. And raptors have an amazing thing. They can sleep while standing up, and it's not a big deal. They have physiological adaptations to where they usually just sit and tuck up their foot, and then they'll close their eyes. And they don't, I think, sleep like we do. It's just brief times, and then they'll look around and then nod off again. So you can see it in the babies, how they take their naps. The parents, it's kind of similar.
So this is a question that I think that either of you could answer, and that is, do the falcons eat anything other than birds? I know that earlier you said that their diet is made up either primarily or overwhelmingly other birds, but do they eat anything else?
Go ahead, Bill.
If the opportunity exists and they're hungry, I think that they would. But peregrine falcons in particular, their primary quarry is feathered animals. They want birds. Now, there are peregrines, and even in this area, that will catch bats. And so they'll learn where the bats come out from the bridges, and it's not unusual. And that would be usually a male peregrine. And by the way, I'm not sure if we mentioned this before, but there's sexual dimorphism in terms of the size of the birds. The females are typically 1/3 larger than the males, and the males, being smaller, are a little bit more maneuverable, if you will, on smaller prey items. So that would be the bird that you would see possibly going after a bat. So that's the main prey species I can think of other than birds would be bats. Prairie falcons now, on the other hand, and falcons, they will eat mammals, and that's not unusual. In fact, during the DDT crisis, prairie falcons survived it primarily because they were catching lizards and mice and other things where DDT was not concentrated in their prey source.
Oh, that's a really interesting story. You mentioned the female birds being larger. Is that the primary way to tell the difference between the male and female birds?
Yeah, that's correct. If we had a scale where we could weigh and we could tell instantly. Another thing we look for is their size of their feet. You can obviously see a noticeable difference. The girls have really long feet. So if you can compare the two, get them next to each other, you can tell, like with Peanut, the size of his foot next to one of his big sisters, it's like night and day. And so we call one of his big sisters Bertha. She's so huge in comparison to the Peanut. That's another nickname we have.
Peanut is so much smaller than his siblings. We get questions about him all the time. So, but I mean, your update earlier in the broadcast was that he's doing okay.
Yeah, like I said, it was a miracle that he lived because he didn't hatch till 5 days later. And often the case is that when the mom stops incubating, that the egg could chill and he wouldn't survive. But he's just one of those, I mean, I hate to say it was a miracle, but I think it really was a miracle that he lived. and survived and thrived, and he fought for his food. I mean, I think we can all admire the rooting for the underdog. And Peanut is just, I mean, I'm shocked he lived. I was so worried. I mean, I lost sleep. My family lost sleep. We were just, I mean, I was tempted to bring him home. I was so worried, but I go, well, I just have to let nature, take its course. But thank God he pulled through.
Our viewing audience is firmly Team Peanut.
Yeah.
Like I said, we just hear about him all the time. We're getting a few more questions from the audience that I'll read off. Okay, this one says, sometimes one parent brings a dead bird, but the other parent grabs it from the other one and then takes off to fly with the dead bird before bringing it back again for the chicks to eat. Why does the second parent do that?
I'll briefly say something, then Bill can elaborate that sometimes the birds will actually stash some food for a later meal. Usually what they're doing is they like to go pluck it and take all the feathers off. And so the female usually will take the food from the male, and it's like, this is my job to feed, you go back and hunt. So that's probably what's going on in this case. Maybe Bill can elaborate on that pattern.
Yeah, that the male is out there making a living for the family, and typically the male will catch the food, and then, as Bill mentioned, there'll be a food exchange, and that's really super fun to watch with peregrine falcons when they do their food exchange. And so the male will release the game in the air to the female. She'll grasp it, and then she'll have a favorite plucking board somewhere. Somewhere on the med center roof, there's probably a big pile of feathers, which is her favorite spot, and she'll pluck them. And if you notice, most of the time on that webcam, when the prey comes in, they're fairly well plucked before she presents them to the young. And so that's what has happened with that process.
Bill Corbett, have you found that random stack of feathers yet?
There are a lot of feathers. Fortunately, there's been a lot of wind, and I think it's been dispersing the feathers, but they can be very messy. As you can see in the nest site, the leftover feathers, and we actually had a professional cleaning crew come in after last year's nesting to clean up the area because it was kind of like a toxic waste area almost. It was that much food, debris, bones, feathers, and excrement. So it was it's not a very clean site. It doesn't smell so bad, which is good, but it definitely gets messy up there.
Good to know that it gets cleaned afterward.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good.
Yeah.
The next question asks, can we do anything to protect them from falling down, or is that just a risk?
It is a risk in urban, and there's a sad thing that's happened in some nests where the peregrines have nested over waterways, and that first flight ends up in a disaster for the fledgling. So the upside is there's lots of food and prey here. The downside is when they take those first flights, there's a higher risk in the urban environment than if they were like nesting on a Morro Rock, a famous nest, down in Central California. So it's just, it's that, pros and cons to where they're nesting.
Yeah, and if we don't get to tell them where to nest, it's where they have chosen to.
Yeah, and a lot of reason they choose a nest too is the way the sun faces and the shade. They're very smart to know that where the sun, like where they get, it's only hot there maybe to about 11 o'clock during the day. So they're very oriented to where the weather is and protection. So there's all these thought processes going on that we probably don't understand that makes them so successful.
This question asks, how often do they lay 5 eggs? Bill Corbett, I think you already said that was quite rare or a surprise.
Yeah, that to have all 5 eggs survive. Usually they'll lay typically 4 and maybe 3 will hatch. I think that's kind of the norm. And to get 5 and to all them successfully hatch, I think is, that, I don't know, 1 in 10,000 type of occurrence. Is that what I would throw out there?
Bill Ferrier, can you talk about that a bit more, about the survival rate?
Well, the survival rate can range all the way down to like 50% with the young. So we've had these estimates through the years where roughly 50% of the young birds don't make it. And so once they fledge, anything can happen. They're susceptible to being eaten by predators. They have to learn what a predator is. And so, they learn by hit and miss. The males in particular, I think the mortality rate with the fledgling males higher than the females. They're smaller. They're a easy prey item for other raptorial birds. Red-tailed hawks, for example, will catch them when the red-tail's strong and the baby has not completely developed, their wing power to escape them. So I've even seen higher estimates from the 50% on the mortality rate on the birds. But these young chicks in the nest, you have an ample food source, and they're just growing like crazy. And so I think they'll get the fledgling age. What happens after that will be up to Mother Nature.
Yeah, and I think we actually say that on the website, a reminder that really Mother Nature is in charge here, but these babies are very lucky to have very experienced parents, and as Bill Corbett said, an excellent mother as well.
Yeah, I think she's the one who's really making the difference here, and I'm pretty confident that our birds will fledge, and at least 4 of the 5 will be okay. It's hard to say that all 5 will make it. That'd be a long shot.
This question asks, how old are the parents and what is their lifespan?
I think Bill can talk about their lifespan, but I think I would say the female we have, she's probably 8 years old, and I would bet the male is 3 if I were betting. Bill can talk more about that.
Well, I have a hybrid falcon that I've used in falconry who is currently 19 years of age. And so they can live up into their 20s. The reality of the situation is in the wild, primarily because of these falcons' encounter with mankind, they just don't live that long. They get hit by cars. I think 10, 11 years, I don't know exactly what the average would be for them, but because of their impact with mankind, they never reached longevity that they would without that. They can hit windmills, wires, particularly for a falcon. When it's stooping down at 200 miles an hour and there's a high tension line there and they don't see the wire, they're going to hit it. And fortunately, we have places like the California Raptor Center that is there to take these injured birds in. We have the resources of the School of Veterinary Medicine that puts tons of money into taking care of these birds through donations that the Raptor Center gets and the kind heart of the local community that brings these birds in and then supports their care. And so we're very fortunate here to have a School of Veterinary Medicine and a Raptor Center that can help these birds make it to an older life.
I'm going to wrap things up with a question that I think a lot of people are asking, and that is, do we know the gender of the babies?
I'm pretty sure we have 2 males and 3 females based on, looking at their feet and their head size. So I know for sure 3 girls definitely for sure. Peanut is definitely a boy, and there's one that's kind of in between. I'm not. I would probably, it's probably a girl. In the I should mention there's on YouTube you can watch some Berkeley birds. They have 1 female and 2 males for sure. They actually banded them and could kind of weigh them and tell for sure. So last year it was just 1 girl and 3 boys. So this year we got a nice mix, more girls and boys.
Yeah, and that little one, like you said,
Yeah.
Peanut, the boy, he's got lots of fans. So go Team Peanut.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bill Corbett and Dr. Bill Ferrier, for being with us today, and Layla as well. It's been a really interesting conversation. I should ask too, was there anything that you'd like to leave our Falcon loving audience with today?
I would just say enjoy the show, and you're going to see a lot of flapping, and they're going to go out on the ledge, and don't worry, it just looks really dangerous. They won't fall off the ledge. It's unlikely, but I think they're going to be fine.
Dr. Ferrier, any final thoughts?
My final thought is how much I appreciate the UC Davis Medical Center. 5 years ago, I had a prosthetic hip put in. I was on, I think it was the 15th floor, wherever the orthopedic floor is. And during the post-op period, I was looking out the window a lot. And here comes a peregrine falcon. And when I saw this adult falcon, I thought to myself, there's got to be a nest. And fortunately, Bill Corbett was on it and was organizing all that. But for me, I'm glad that the UC Davis Medical Center is supporting this nest. And let me tell you, I was so pleased with the outcome that I had at the medical center with my prosthetic hip.
Wonderful. We try to take care of all, right?
Yeah, birds, people, we do it all here.
Thank you so much to the
Okay.
both of you for sharing this incredible information with us.
Yeah.
And thanks to those of you who are viewing for joining us for this UC Davis Health Facebook Live. If you have more questions, please continue to post them in the comments and we'll get them to our experts so that they can be answered. And we encourage you to share this post if you have friends or family who you think would like to learn from it. To watch our Peregrine family at UC Davis Medical Center, please visit our homepage, health.ucdavis.edu, and look for the Falcon photo. It has a link to the Peregrine page and the streaming webcam. That's at health.ucdavis.edu. Happy Falcon watching, and thanks for being with us.